Timmy Twist and the Teleporting T-Rex Adventure. One time, in the small town of Littleville, lived a boy named Timmy Twist. Timmy was a regular kid with a not-so-regular superpower. He could teleport. It wasn't something he told everyone about because, well, he was still figuring it out. His teleporting powers were a little unpredictable. Sometimes they'd work, sometimes they wouldn't, and sometimes they'd work at the worst possible moments. One day, Timmy woke up to his alarm buzzing furiously. "Today's the field trip," he exclaimed, remembering his class was going to a science museum that featured a huge dinosaur exhibit. Timmy couldn't wait. He loved dinosaurs more than anything. He threw on his clothes, stuffed his lunch into his backpack, and was ready to go when he suddenly realized he was already at the bus stop. He hadn't even walked out of his room yet. "Oh, not again," he muttered, realizing his teleporting powers had kicked in. Thankfully, the bus was just pulling up, and Timmy hopped on, acting as if nothing strange had happened. But inside, he was buzzing with excitement, hoping his powers wouldn't act up again. Arrival at the museum. The class arrived at the museum, and the guide, Miss Wriggles, started leading them through exhibits about planets, volcanoes, and ancient creatures. Timmy was paying close attention, trying to stay focused. But the moment they entered the dinosaur exhibit, he couldn't contain himself. He leaned in to look closely at a life-sized T-Rex model. "I wish I could see a real dinosaur just once," he whispered to himself. Suddenly, he felt a familiar whoosh, and before he knew it, he was no longer in the museum. He was standing in the middle of a prehistoric jungle. A dino-sized surprise all around him, enormous trees towered above, and strange plants grew everywhere. Timmy heard a rustling noise, and when he turned, he saw a gigantic triceratops munching on some leaves. Timmy's jaw dropped. "Oh boy! This is way cooler than I imagined." But then, he heard a loud thump. And another. And another. He looked up and saw the terrifying shadow of a T-Rex stomping in his direction. With a gulp, Timmy realized he needed to teleport back right away. He concentrated with all his might, hoping his powers would work when he wanted them to, not 5 minutes later. Thankfully, with a flash, he was back in the museum, face to face with the T-Rex model. His classmates hadn't even noticed he was gone. "Phew," he whispered, wiping sweat off his forehead. But just then, he heard a loud roar. Was that my stomach?" he muttered. Nope. It was definitely the T-Rex model roaring. Except this time, it didn't look like a model. It was alive. Timmy's teleportation must have brought it back with him. "The great dinosaur chase, everybody, run!" shouted Timmy. The entire class turned to see the T-Rex, now stomping around the museum. Kids screamed, teachers ran, and even Miss Wriggles took off, her guide hat flying off her head. Timmy's friend Jake ran up to him, eyes wide with excitement. "Dude! How did you make the T-Rex come to life?" he yelled. Magic?" Timmy stammered, not sure what else to say. The T-Rex, now looking as confused as a dinosaur can look, stomped toward the cafeteria. Smelling something delicious, it poked its giant head through the doors, sniffing around. Timmy realized it was probably just hungry. He had to act fast before the T-Rex went wild in the snack area. "Think, Timmy, think," he muttered. An idea struck him. He had packed a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch, and maybe, just maybe, it could do the trick. Peanut butter and jelly saves the day. Timmy took his sandwich out, waved it above his head, and shouted, "Here, T-Rex. Come and get it. The T-Rex turned its giant head, sniffing the air, and its eyes locked onto Timmy's sandwich. Timmy began running, leading the dinosaur back through the museum toward the dinosaur exhibit. When he reached the T-Rex model's stand, he threw his sandwich to the ground. The T-Rex sniffed it once, then gobbled it up, apparently satisfied. But Timmy still had a problem. He needed to send the dinosaur back. He closed his eyes, crossed his fingers, and concentrated on teleporting the T-Rex back to the prehistoric jungle. In a flash, both he and the T-Rex disappeared. They arrived back in the prehistoric jungle, where the T-Rex seemed very pleased to be home. Timmy sighed in relief as the T-Rex lumbered away, probably looking for more prehistoric snacks. Back to reality just as quickly as he'd arrived, Timmy teleported back to the museum. He found his classmates huddled in the corner, and Ms. Wriggles was talking to the museum director, trying to explain what had just happened. Everything's back to normal, Timmy said, grinning sheepishly. Back to normal? Timmy, nothing has been normal since we met you, said his friend Jake, laughing. Timmy chuckled, realizing Jake was probably right. But as the day ended and they got back on the bus, Timmy couldn't help but smile to himself. Sure, his powers were unpredictable, but they also made life a whole lot more interesting. And who knows? Maybe one day, he'd finally master them. Until then, he'd keep his peanut butter and jelly sandwiches close. Just in case.